we've outsourced a lot of our functions to overseas teammates, virtual assistants in the Philippines. And so they do a lot of the clerical things, the traditional LOA roles, insurance, appraisals, et cetera. We have probably about 30 or 40 people overseas that are helping support those roles. And that's roughly about 2,000, give or take, per month per employee overseas. Stateside, we have about 25 people, and their roles are essentially base plus bonus. So our goal is to get everyone over, the 100,000 marks. And really, if we look at a year to date, it'd be on the low end, like 110, 115. And then on the high end, probably like a top sales person would be earning around like the 200 to 220 range. So that's kind of the range of pay based on role, but it does vary, of course, on productivity and everything like that.
Yeah, but if you're doing, say, 350 million in annualized production and you're averaging 150 to 200 basis points profit on that, there's plenty of room to compensate for the overhead that you just articulated. So let's talk about the overseas stuff. I mean, that was one of the areas that I wanted to take this conversation, and you took us there. So let's just deepen that. When did you guys start using virtual assistants? That's number one. Number two is, I think that most people get really worried when it comes to, letting go of control and sending, the loan file or elements of the loan file to an offshore entity, especially when it comes to communicating with the borrowers in any type of verbal way with accents and all that kind of stuff. Give us an idea as to how that's been for you guys. What's the process for getting these people integrated onto your team, and what kind of roles do they fulfill? I mean, you kind of shared that a little bit with the LOA thing, but maybe you could go a little deeper.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a learning experience for us. I think our first virtual hire was about 6 or 7 years ago. So right around the time when I was hired was when we first started experimenting with overseas support, maybe about a year in. So 6 years at this point from the very first one. And frankly, it was a lot of learning through experience and trial and error, seeing what worked and what didn't work. Where we found the most success is pairing up the overseas team member with somebody stateside, or pairing a stateside person with up to 2 or even 3 assistants that they oversee and manage. That's going to ensure a high degree of quality, a fast feedback loop for fixing errors or for stepping in if something gets done incorrectly. And that's currently the structure we have today. Essentially, you'll have whatever stateside position, they have their overseas people that they delegate to. That provides for some flexibility, for immediateness, where, if I tell my assistant, hey, I need you to work on this project or prioritize these things, they can immediately do that for us. We also have paired it up where another thing that we've learned to be successful with is making sure our assistants work on the same time zone as us. Some overseas operations will sell that, hey, we're working when you're sleeping, right, as an upside. We found that doesn't necessarily work for our type of workflow, because that becomes a little bit more of like an underwriting relationship. I package up my requests, I ship it somewhere, and then a day later I get an answer. But if I realize that I made a mistake on my packaging, right, I didn't explain something clearly enough, then I'm losing a day every single time I need to go back and re-explain. So we found having assistants that work in our time zone is the most effective. So some of the things we've learned in terms of what work they take on, we're not quite to the point where most are communicating with clients. For the most part, at least verbally over the phone, because the accents are, a real challenge. And we think that there's a little bit of a aversion to that when a client picks up the phone and they feel like, hey, I'm not getting somebody in the States, what's going on here? So for the most part, we filter for employees that have really strong written or writing capabilities. And we also, of course, leverage AI tools to make sure that their writing is on par. So they'd be drafting up emails, needs lists, scenarios, getting things prepped. So then the mortgage analyst or the closing specialist or whomever is actually owning that file or that step of the process is going to put eyes on what's happening. But I'll say probably 9 times out of 10, it's like, okay, cool, everything looks good, hit send. Where the email's drafted perfectly, the needs are explained, the reason we need a signature on the 4506T is well written out. And so you get to that point over a lot of repetition and having somebody that works alongside you and kind of learns how you say things, how you do things, and can for better or worse mimic what you're doing. And if they send an email, if my assistant sends an email as Andrei, my hope is that the recipient on the other side can't tell that my assistant drafted it.